Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name is John Martin, and I'm here with Allison Flero. We're both with Dialogue Insight, your marketing catalyst partner. And today we'd like to talk to you a little bit about how to wake up some sleeping or inactive contacts, a topic that should be interesting to anybody in the email game. So without much further ado, we'll move on. Today, we'd like to encourage you to ask any questions you may have. Your marketing efforts are, of course, unique to your business, and if the questions make sense to you, we'd like an opportunity to address them. We'll try and answer all the questions at the end of the presentation. We're also recording today, so following the presentation, you will get a copy, and we encourage you to share that with colleagues and friends and other people who might be interested, and see if we can't help everybody a little bit with, waking up sleeping contacts. So to dive right into that, we'd like to start by taking a look at your subscriber life cycle. This is something that you maybe know about or think about from time to time, in the back of your mind. But just to put it in writing, or a visualization, you have a visitor or a client, some sort of sourcing technique that lets you acquire contacts. Maybe they come from a trade show, maybe they come from your website, but whatever that is, there's an attraction or an acquisition phase. From there, you move into onboarding, where you help educate these people about what your business does, how good you are to deal with.
I'm sorry, I believe we've lost John.
Okay, we're back.
Okay, I can hear you.
Sorry about. I'm terribly sorry. My internet briefly went down there, and I apologize for any hiccup. If I can collect my thoughts for a second, perhaps we can carry on with this. What I thought I was starting to say is, following the hyper engagement phase, it's by no means the end of your subscriber life cycle, and from there, contacts will move into a transition phase where perhaps their activity with you slows down a little bit, and if you're not careful or you don't pay attention to that, they can, progress all the way to the unsubscribe phase. So what we're going to talk about today is that, level 4, transition phase, where we can maybe help you with re-engagement campaigns, preference center strategies, and other tools that can help you, reduce or maybe come close to eliminating that transition phase. So one interesting point in this is that if we do this process correctly, it may change some of your email sending habits to the point where instead of sending hundreds of messages at a time or thousands of messages at a time, once a month, you may end up sending 50 messages a day, but there'll be very pointed and very directed messages that, can have a significant effect on sleeping clients. So, did you have something, Allison?
Sorry, I was just going to say exactly, by taking out your sleeping contacts out of your regular sending cycle and making a specific campaign specifically for them to re-engage them.
And we'll continue to look at that. That's going to be a reoccurring theme, throughout this discussion or this talk. Wanted to go back to some industry statistics as to why this is important, or just how important this is. On average, if you don't pay attention to your contacts, you could stand to lose as much as 25% of them, on an annual basis. Some companies think of this as a churn rate. Some companies think of this as inevitable, but basically it's very significant. And of course, if you have a 25% attrition rate or a churn rate, then you need to focus even more energy on acquisition in order to keep your list growing and your strategies thriving. So what we're doing is we're going to focus on how to re-engage those contacts to maybe reduce, in some cases maybe eliminate that churn rate, and hopefully drive you to a more successful overall marketing strategy. So let's take a look at how to recover people in the transition process and, maybe a little bit more on what that really means. I want to talk for just a moment on ISPs and other receiving mail servers. When you send a message, it used to be that the spam filters would focus more on the content of the message, reference to little blue pills, reference to free offers, reference to, the kind of content that would effectively, tag your message as spam. And today, they've expanded that to include inactive contacts. So it's no longer just the content of your message, that people are looking at or that the receiving servers are looking at. Now it's the activity on the receiving side. So left unchecked, if you have a significant number of inactive contacts, it can actually, slow down your delivery rate even for active contacts, because effectively you become a less trusted sender than you are if all of your contacts are, engaged and active with you. So this is very important to pay attention to in terms of, the overall behavior of your email marketing strategy. So just something to be aware of. Let's take a look at what that looks like from, the ISP or receiving server strategy. Let's say that you have a 50-50 database, and in your 50-50 database, 50% of your contacts are active and thriving and, write exactly the kind of contacts you want them to be. But the other 50% are inactive. So when the receiving server sees those inactive contacts, it has that kind of an effect or an impact on your sending reputation. So if you remove those inactive contacts, and by remove I mean segment them out, create a separate list, develop processes and strategies to treat them differently, then you can reduce what the mail servers see in terms of how active your contacts are. So this chart just runs through a couple examples here where 100%, 75% inactive, 50% inactive, and 25% inactive. So segmenting out your inactive contacts can help the mail servers see your sendings in a much more positive light.
And also by doing a re-engagement campaign, your percentage of inactives will start to be reduced because those people, once they become engaged again, then become part of your active contacts.
Absolutely. That's the whole focus of this presentation is, rather than eliminate those contacts or delete those contacts, let's look at strategies that we can get to reactivate them and bring them back into the fold. So we've talked a little bit about how this should be a process. And a process is very different from a task. A task, of course, is very time consuming. You have to think of it manually every day or every month. But if you start thinking of this as a process that you can automate through the platform, through the marketing platform, then it becomes automatic. It also runs on its own 24/7. And in that way, it doesn't need to be a time drain. But you do need to think of what the steps are and how to do this. So this is a simple example of what might comprise a standard re-engagement process. So you decide about your group of inactive clients. You initiate contact with them with a "we miss you" style email, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get into examples. That may or may not yield results. So rather than give up, we encourage you to repeat that email, perhaps with a different one, a different strategy, a stronger message. Even just a different message, may get you, results. And then if they continue to be inactive, you go through to a last chance email. And of course, each one of these needs a unique call to action. It needs special content. It needs, and we'll give you some ideas on how to do that. but make them compelling, make them unique, make them interesting, and the process will be a lot more successful. At any point in those messages, you can create the second branch, and the branch can be triggered by as little as an email open, maybe a click on a link, but from there, you can initiate your welcome back strategy, and that can be unique to the process, or it can be very similar to your warming process we talked about earlier in the customer life cycle. At the end of the process, people change, their needs change. If they're still inactive with you, maybe your contact left the company, maybe they've met their needs and they're not interested anymore. But whatever the reason is, don't be afraid to opt those clients out manually and globally and move them off to the side for all the reasons we discussed earlier. It lets you focus on the active clients you want in your database, and it will help protect your sending reputation by preserving the active contacts you really need to message and keep on your side. So don't be afraid to globally opt them out after the process has had an opportunity to run for days, weeks, or in some cases as long as a month or two. So we can help you with strategy specific to your business for that, but just be aware that the process does have an end, and there's two outcomes: successful and unsuccessful. So let's talk about a couple other things that you have that that will help you define disengagement. You have data, and the data can be information in the platform, it can be information in your business, it can be driven from your point of sale system, it can be driven from product usage, but there's lots of data you have that can fill in as to when a client is active or not. Maybe it comes from your sales team. Maybe it comes from how you identify a prospect versus a customer or a client. But you also have your own instinct. So instinctively, you will know your business. You will know your product life cycles. You will know your sell cycles. And the instinct that you have is just as important as the data in terms of defining the difference between a client who's just sitting in the bushes waiting for something, perhaps one that you're trying to maintain mind share with, and somebody who's truly inactive with you or has lost or reduced interest in what you have to offer. So be aware of both of those when it comes to defining disengaged clients. Start thinking in terms of the groups that will fall out of that. Contacts that were never active, contacts that have bought once or maybe even achieved a VIP status with you, but have somehow become inactive or have strayed away from you. And then contacts that have never bought and never have been active and may never will be active. You know the sources of those contacts, your own businesses, but start thinking in terms of those classes, and that'll help you in turn define the groups that can initiate the sending processes. So let's talk about a couple specific strategies now that you have an idea as to how to define active or inactive clients, contacts. One thing you can look to in your messages is the subject lines. And here's a few examples that we've used, with different clients, over the years. A few are even in French. So what we encourage you to do with these is use them as a brainstorming platform, with you and your team to perhaps think of something clever that's different from what you do now. Should be short, should be straight to the point. It should be obvious that you're trying to re-engage with clients, that you have something special to offer, but start thinking of the unique subject lines, that will help you, with your re-engagement messages. Brainstorm a few. Don't be afraid to test them. Remember, this process done properly will run 24/7. So test a few subject lines first, and that way you'll be continuing to use the most effective ones, in your message. Don't forget variable content. Perhaps there's some way you can put something unique in the subject line that's specific to your contacts. And that, of course, will increase the open rate and get you where you need to be in terms of reactivating your clients.
Right, and as you get to the end of the cycle, when you're getting close to your last chance email, it doesn't hurt to try and be a little more aggressive also to get that engagement.
Absolutely. Good point. And we'll talk about that in in some of these examples as well. So let's take a look at a re-engagement message, and we've brought up a couple samples to go along with our speaking points on, what you could do here with your business. The background makes subject line makes an impact. The background makes an impact. The content makes an impact. Reminder of the advantages of working with you or being on the list. That'll make a contribution. The goal here is to keep these messages different, catchy, visual. Don't be afraid to use a little bit of humor. We've noticed you've been a little distant lately, combined with a picture of a road and in this case, it looks like a bicycle race, but basically people that might be pedaling away. So the idea is to make these messages different from your normal corporate messages. The normal corporate messages have not kept these clients engaged with you. So differentiate, offer something different and unique, and that will encourage people to come back to you. You're trying to provoke something here. You're trying to, stimulate a thought process that's maybe a little bit different, than what your clients are used to. Now, we talked earlier about using data as a trigger for defining an inactive contact. So if you're in the software business, if you're in the portal business, software as a service, or you have an electronic solution that provides value to your contacts, usage can be one of the triggers that you use to send an email. So in this case, we have an example with Dropbox. So Dropbox solution that stores files, cloud solution. And the Dropbox people can tell when the last time you logged in was, okay? They know when the last time you saved a file. They know, when the last time you shared photographs with other people in the family. They understand this, and they can keep reminding you that Dropbox is there. Perhaps there's new photos that somebody put in the folder, and you want to use that as a trigger to send a message to the recipients. Hey, this happened a week ago. This happened a month ago. You haven't looked at them yet. Please come on in and look at them. Usage is definitely one of the triggers you can have if that's the type of business that you're in. So don't be afraid to use that. Similar, we have another example from a fitness app. A fitness app in this case is called Runkeeper. Runkeeper lets you enter, exercise activity and other health data that can use to give you a better lifestyle. So again, people signed up for Runkeeper, with the intention of doing that. But just like any other gym membership, their interest may wane over time. So reminding them that we know you have the goal. We know people have a goal to increase their fitness level, maybe lose weight. My fitness app keeps sending me messages and badges and telling me how wonderful I am and how good I'm doing. I know there's friends out there that are doing better, by the way, but the messages sort of keep the mind share that, a healthy lifestyle is a good thing for me to reach for. And on that note, we're going to switch to ice cream. I'm sorry, that was maybe funnier in my head than it was in person. But from an ice cream perspective or any other business that has point of sale, you can establish loyalty programs that can also be a measure of activity with your clients. And to that end, if you notice somebody hasn't fulfilled their loyalty card in a reasonable amount of time, then perhaps you can send them a message to try the new flavor of the week or some other enticement to maybe bring them back into your place of business and re-engage with your, point of sale strategies. So data and usage, very big triggers for re-engaging your clients. So the other thing, you know, we want to be simple, and you don't want to forget the personalization aspect of re-engagement. So in this case, you know, we have a very appealing picture of a little puppy, and we're encouraging people to come back. This message can be, or the content, the graphic, the words, they can all be triggered by the information in a contact profile and the variable data you're able to collect through the platform. So don't be afraid to use that when you construct, you know, your process and your message templates, you know, for sending the re-engagement messages.
Yes, and this example from Teespring is actually pointing out what they could be missing if they don't launch their next campaign.
Puppy's hard to ignore. You got to admit, the puppy is hard to ignore. Another strategy is, you know, in the day-to-day operations of your business, you do things. And by that, I mean you initiate new products, you refine existing products, you add new models, you launch new web pages, you launch new catalogs, maybe you have a new store opening. But there are things in your day-to-day business activities that are exciting. Why not leverage that activity in a re-engagement campaign? So in this case, we're saying we missed you, so we built you a new website. Why don't you come and check out our new website? You'll get a few clicks. I mean, people that were on your list are there for a reason. At some point, they were interested in you. So whatever the new activity is, it's refreshing to them. And, you know, they're going to want to check it out. So don't be afraid to be a little funny, and don't be afraid to use curiosity to provoke some action. So tell them it's new, but don't tell them how new, okay? Or, you know, save that part, you know, for when they click on the link or when they, you know, revisit your website. So use things that are existing in your business, you know, with your tongue in your cheek, and try and get your contacts to come back to you. We wanted to include a message here with a discount, but I wanted to also say that as compelling as a discount is, or as easy as a discount is to offer to re-engage your contacts, it's also, you know, maybe something you want to save for your more valuable contacts. So maybe you want to include this later in your message sequence in terms of bringing people back. You don't want to make this your first step, but maybe it's your second or third step, you know, before you define somebody as inactive. You also might want to put this offer as a reward from people who activate, you know, following the engagement step. So just be aware that a discount offer is certainly available to you. You can cite a coupon code. You can set, you know, a click on a link. There's a number of strategies we can help you with to make that happen specifically. But you might want to save that for the more valuable contacts that you have and the people you truly want to reward with a discount, as opposed to the people you're trying to get to re-engage with you. There's also a seasonal aspect to this message, and talking on time and seasonal and affecting things like your sell cycles, this can also be part of your re-engagement strategy. So I'd like to talk through a couple examples there. In this case, you see a summer patio example. And the summer patio example, you're clearly not going to send that message in February. So those people you're going to want to re-engage with when the new season hits, and start sending that in the spring. Right about now might be a good time. In a B2B world, your sell cycles could be a lot longer. Your ticket items could be a lot higher. In some case, $2, $3, $4, $5 million. People aren't going to buy that kind of item or that kind of business process system. I'm thinking, perhaps an asset management system, for people in factories. That's a world that I used to work in. But people make that decision on a 3, 5, or even a 10-year cycle. So the goal of your email strategy might be to maintain mind share and keep sending them useful tips against the time when that process comes up for review. So a client that looks inactive might in fact be right where you want them to be, because all you're doing is using, what you're doing is using your email marketing strategy to maintain the mind share so that when the time comes, you can do the right thing. By contrast, if in the B2C world, if you're a grocery store, for example, your activity triggers could be a lot different. What you want people to do is see your weekly flyer and use that to get them to shop at your store instead of the competitors. And with that in mind, the opening of an email may well be enough. But, we can help you with the specifics on that over time. Lastly, I want to move on to, closer to the end of the process, maybe something you do all the way through. If email is not the right platform for your clients to communicate with you, don't be afraid to encourage them to join you on Facebook, to connect with you on LinkedIn, and use other strategies in terms of preserving your ability to contact your customers. So include your social media links, perhaps make reference in a re-engagement campaign to something that's happening on social media that's maybe a little bit special, and you'll be able to use those platforms to retain as much communication with your contacts as possible. So start thinking of your re-engagement process as, relevant, targeted, timely, and value emails to people who, were subscribed and that you'd like to be active again. Think of it as something you can do through marketing automation, so it runs automatically, it runs clean, it runs all the time, and overall, preserves the integrity of your database. I wanted to move on from there and talk a little bit about CASL. CASL, of course, is the Canadian anti-spam law. But beyond that, for those in other jurisdictions today, CASL is a series of best practices that also help with things like canned spam and other marketing legislation or email-specific legislation. So there's a threshold coming up with CASL, another milestone we're about to cross. On July 1st, the CRTC is no longer going to be the exclusive body to prosecute or receive and prosecute spam complaints. Effective July 1st, the general population will be able to initiate those lawsuits, directly. And what you want to do is make sure you have a platform like Dialogue Insight and marketing strategies to go along with it that will let you preserve your history, your consents, and so on in such a way that you can defend yourself against those allegations. This is why it's important to keep those contacts on your list, even though you're segmenting them out from your regular emails. It's also worth talking about the kinds of consent that CASL has. There's explicit consent, which is where somebody agrees to receive your messages. They maybe checked a file or, perhaps given you explicit consent through other means. But there's also implied consent. And implied consent can be with the people who didn't agree to receive your emails specifically, but they did buy from you. Or maybe you met them at a trade show or something and business cards exchanged hands. The implied consent rules, again, they can be defined in your legal department, but in general, if somebody buys from you, for example, you have a period of 2 years to keep sending them messages. So it's important that you have a platform that will log and record that and allow you to use it in your marketing strategy. Maybe you want to drive to getting explicit consent, but there's, a number of different levels in this that our team can help you with. So we're not lawyers, by the way. This is something you're better to take up with your legal team if you want, final legal advice, but we do encourage you to look to these things. Preference Center. We also offer Preference Center, in our platform. And with a Preference Center, you can let your users pick and choose what types of communication they want to receive from you, and that can, also enhance, what you send them. There's also a couple other things we have in the platform, things like email interceptors and website pop-ups, so that your account managers at Dialogue Insight can help you with all of those. But those can be triggered by inactivity of your contacts. They can be triggered by implied consent that's about to expire, or they can be something you use as part of your regular onboarding strategy to help you capture capture emails and other information, and better interact with your database. So just be aware that Castle's about to cross another milestone, and that even without Castle, these are best practices that will help you with your overall email strategy. So we're going to put a picture of the process up again. Just to remind you that, re-engagement is a process. I think we'll leave this process slide up for a moment while we take this time to, perhaps address a few questions that you might have had.
Yes, and just to point out that this process slide also has the change of the implied consent to explicit consent in there as well as the re-engagement. So looking at questions now, okay. First question, is it possible to use marketing scenarios to manage the re-engagement process?
Yes, it is. This is what we've been encouraging all along. Marketing scenarios is another term we use to describe marketing automation. And if you set up the right marketing automation with the right triggers, it can be a very elegant way to manage a re-engagement process automatically within your usage of email in the platform. Not only segmenting clients, inactive clients out to protect your sending reputation, but treating them differently in a way that encourages them to re-engage with you. So absolutely, marketing automation, marketing scenarios, very powerful way to do this.
Yes, and a little bit on the more technical how-to side. In this case, the trigger of the scenario will then be based on the group that you would have created to target your unengaged contacts. So your scenario can be launched every day to target the new people in your group, and those people can follow a specific path of re-engagement automatically.
Perfect.
One more question. In the platform, how would we identify contacts that have not opened in 6 months or a year?
In the group creation dialog, we've added activity tabs that let you define that sort of thing. So there's a number of activities that can automatically be collected in the platform, but specifically time frames for opening a message can be included there. So look to the activity tabs in your group creation. The time frame is variable, so you can create that over a week, a month, or a year. You have some choices to make there, but it's found in the group creation under the activity section. Now, another word about groups and using them for this kind of a re-engagement process. The groups are dynamic. So if somebody qualifies for a group because they didn't open an email from you within the last year, then they are part of the process, and it's sent and it's followed through its pathways. So let's say that somebody reaches the end of that successfully by clicking on a link that you provide, opening a message, clicking on a link, whatever the trigger is. That activity will also be collected by the system, and it will automatically exclude people from that group potentially they might qualify for the group again depending on your time frame, but that could take a month or a year later, depending on how you define inactive clients. So look to the activity tabs in the group, and remember that groups are intelligent and they will be dynamic, and that'll best reflect the automated processes you need to wrap this all up.
And there are no other questions.
Okay, well, I think I ran a little bit over. I do apologize for the technical error I had earlier. Sorry, my internet went down briefly there, but I think we managed to get through it. That said, thank you for joining us today. We're happy to be working with all of you, and Allison and I hope to hear back from you if you have additional questions, or please raise those through your regular account contacts at Dialogue Insight. Thank you for your time today.